My wife has cancer, and there is no cure for her cancer. She takes a pill every day. It serves as a form of oral chemo, gives her crazy side effects. As long as the side effects happen, we know the pill is working. One day the pill will stop working. It's supposed to stop working after 2 years. And she's 6 years in and it's still working, thankfully. Her cancer is in her lungs. It is stage 4. And it is held in stasis by this pill and has not spread out of her lungs. And every 3 months, metronomically, we show up at the hospital and she gets a CT scan and blood work and meets with the doctor, and they give her 3 more months. And this has been our routine now for 6 years. I am an evangelical Christian, as is my wife. We are in the Presbyterian Church in America, which is the denomination of this school in Nashville. The pastor is a friend of friends of mine. And I bring up my wife's cancer because I get asked by people who are not believers, people who aren't Christian. In fact, there's a very nice man in Great Britain that I interact with on Instagram who has asked me this before. He's an atheist. Says, how can you believe in a God that would allow your wife to get an incurable form of cancer? And I've seen in the last 24 hours a lot of people asking the same thing about the people in the school, an evangelical Christian school where 3 children, including the pastor's child, and 3 employees have been killed by this shooter. Yesterday on Instagram, a man named David Packman put up a tweet, and this is it. Very surprising that there would be a mass shooting at a Christian school, given that lack of prayer is often blamed for these horrible events. Is it possible they weren't praying enough or correctly, despite being a Christian school? A lot of people fundamentally misunderstand this, particularly as this country has moved beyond the faith of its founders. And I at least, whether you're a believer or not, at least would like for you to understand the beliefs of the people in the school. I am in a Reformed theological seminary which produces many ministers that preach into this denomination of believers. And I will tell you the answer here for them, for my wife's cancer, is how can you not believe? You believe in evil, which therefore suggests you believe in a good. And if you believe in a good, there's got to be a standard. Everybody is a moral relativist until they get into good and evil, and there's a clear standard of good and there's a clear standard of evil. Where does the good come from? Tim Keller, the theologian, also in this denomination, the PCA, has written a book and says it comes from the great says who. If there is no God, who says what is right? Who says what is wrong? Who says what is good? Who says what is evil? There must be some universal arbiter because everyone agrees that no one should go into a school and murder children. So where does that come from? Society itself, really? Does it come from society? Is it just the mob rule of who says good and evil, but miraculously everyone, everywhere, in every generation has concluded the same thing, that this is bad? Or does it come from some divine spark within us? And if so, where does that divine spark come from? The answer to the evil is not that there's an opposing, countervailing good, although there is. The answer to the evil, as I see it, as these people who died see it, as the parents of these children see it, is that evil comes from the absence of God. And it is no coincidence we are seeing a rise in this sort of evil as this country has decided it's big enough to move on from God, and that we ourselves can be the creators. There is a side angle tie-in here. In Genesis 1, God creates us male and female. And the killer is one who believed that she could make herself male. She decided she could be her own God and moved beyond the God of all creation. And in monstrous evil ways returned to the elementary school of her youth to kill the children there. Evil is not the opposite of God. There's no yin and yang here. There's no karma. Evil is the absence of God. You can choose not to believe in God, but then what do you believe in? When we're confronted with an evil like this, someone killing children in a school, innocent kids, we're confronted with evil. Well, there's got to be something on the other side of evil, and what is it? I think it's a divine creator. And then you say, well, why would your God allow this? Why would your God allow this? Why does your God allow children to be gunned down in school? Why does your God allow your wife to get an incurable form of cancer that will more likely than not one day take her life? Why does your God not cure her? Why does your God not shield these children? If you believe in a God who's so good, he must not be all-powerful. And if he is all-powerful, he could have stopped this, and he didn't. Therefore, how can you say he's all good? The answer is that he himself did not escape the evils of the world, but chose to walk with us through it. In 2 weeks, 2 to 3 billion people on planet Earth will celebrate Easter Sunday. These people, the majority of the planet, or I guess the plurality, I should say, 7 billion people on the planet, 3 billion of them believe the God of all creation condescended himself, being born of a virgin, lived through life, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, killed, buried, descended to hell, and 3 days later came out of the tomb. You see, what these people believe in this school that gets them through this is that they can't escape the evil in the world, but God didn't escape it either. The evil in the world comes from the absence of God. The evil in the world comes through our sin. The evil in the world is something where God isn't, it exists. We in our sin state left the Garden of Eden and we twisted the world. Disease comes from our sin state, Christians believe. The cancer, the fallen world, it all comes from that fall. It echoes and ripples throughout all of history, and we can't escape it. And so God chose to live life with us as a human being, enduring it with us. The sins of the world piled up on him on the cross. He died, and he conquered death. That we don't get to escape this world, and he walked through this world with us, so he knows exactly the tragedy we're going through. He weeps for these children, even as he wraps his arms around them and welcomes them home. That's what this family believes. That's what these people believe. That's what these believers believe. That's what most of Western civilization has believed until now. And it is, again, not a coincidence that as we as a society move beyond that belief, we deal with these tragedies more. Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe this morning was talking about how something has happened clearly in this country in the last 25 years. We've had Newtown, Connecticut. We've had Uvalde, Texas. We've had Parkland, Florida. We've now had Nashville, Tennessee. What is going on? We've had Columbine, Colorado. All of these things. I have listeners right now in Newtown, Connecticut, and Parkland, Florida, and Uvalde, Texas. I have listeners in Columbine. I know. I see them on my live stream. I know where my audience is. Families affected by this. I know people impacted directly by the shooting yesterday, by the loss of life, people who are friends with some of those who died. A friend of mine, his father taught the children of the substitute teacher who was murdered yesterday. And these people are grounded in a faith that says that evil is the absence of God. And for those who say something has clearly happened in this country in the last 25 years, I would tell you what I think has happened is not our ready access to guns, which hasn't changed. Our fundamental thing that has changed is that we as a country have decided we don't need God anymore, so he has left us to our own devices. And in our own devices, as he is gone, as we are in a place in a society that we could call evil. And there are a lot of good people. We saw some yesterday who stormed in. The police of Uvalde, Texas should for the rest of their lives every day have to wake up and view the video of the Nashville Police storming in to confront the killer. We have a spiritual crisis in the country, and I understand there are some of you listening right now who say we should round up all the guns. As I have grown in talk radio, I hear two things regularly. One is stop talking about faith so much, and the other is don't talk about guns. Today, the two topics collide into one story. And I understand the people who wish to pass laws to restrict the guns. And I want my listeners who are Second Amendment advocates, as I am, to at least understand the people who have rushed to the idea that why can't we pass meaningful gun control? Why can't we round up all the guns? They're looking for a solution. They don't want to just not do anything. They're tired of this happening. And they're looking for a solution. Unfortunately, the solution they have arrived at is one that will not happen. Not because Republicans won't pass it, but because we have a Second Amendment in this country, and we're not going to find 2/3 of both houses of Congress and 3/4 of the states to repeal it. But they're trying to find a solution. But concurrent with that is the mental health issue. Why is there not better funding in mental health, except we're dealing with a shooter who's transgender, whose society itself now says that's not a mental health issue, so good luck getting the funding. Or perhaps we should realize what is happening in our efforts to find ways to protect ourselves and our children and those we love in our community. We, all of us, continue very often to try to find political and policy solutions for spiritual problems. There is no political solution that will protect you from a spiritual problem. And people on all sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, progressive, independent, moderate, they want to find political solutions to spiritual problems. We're dealing with a spiritual crisis in the country. We have stopped believing in each other. We have stopped loving our neighbor. We have turned inward, and we have made ourselves our own gods such that we now believe we can make ourselves male and female. And in the fallout, the casualty count now includes 3 9-year-olds in Nashville, Tennessee, a custodian, a substitute teacher, and the principal. There are a lot of people who are struggling today with this news. It has happened yet again. And why do we as a country not do something about it? I don't blame or cast aspersions on anyone today who's screaming about gun control. At least they want to do something. But their solution isn't going to happen. And the sad thing is that the debate over mental health, it's not going to happen either. We keep going in circles on this. And until we come to terms with the actual problem, a spiritual crisis, and the absence of God in our country, we're not going to hear the end of these stories, unfortunately. There will come a day when every tear will be dried out of every eye and all things will be made new, and we're not there yet. I would at least like those of you who are not people of faith to understand that when you ask a question, how could this happen at a Christian school? Where was their God? That they already know the answer to that. He's in heaven weeping, waiting for them to come home, and himself waiting to return to make all things new. And the people who suffer and are in despair, including the pastor who lost his 9-year-old daughter, in 2 weeks will wake up at sunrise and say he is risen. And it is that fundamental, profound belief that gives them and gives me with my wife's situation a profound sense of hope. When our scripture says hope, it means a profound certainty. We believe by faith, but we have plenty of evidence it is true. And we will shed tears for the fallen. People will attend the funerals. They will spit on the name of the shooter. But they put their faith in something greater than themselves. And too many of us in this country are where we are as a country because we've stopped putting our faith in a higher power and convinced ourselves we are our own gods. And unless we can get back to a belief in a higher power and a greater good, we're not going to change. But there will one day at least be a final day.